The paper in my hand felt colder than the January air outside. It wasn't a grocery list or a handwritten poem. It was a printed schedule, crisp and utterly devoid of human kindness. Starting tomorrow, these are your new responsibilities, Elara. My daughter, Renee, pronounced my name with the clipped authority of a project manager addressing a subordinate. Her voice lacked the familiar warmth of the child I had raised alone in this very house. The list was exhaustive, an 18-hour itinerary of servitude, 6 a.m. breakfast prep, 7:30 a.m. school drop-off for the grandchildren, 8:30 a.m. deep cleaning, 10 a.m. laundry. It continued hour by hour until 11 p.m., concluding with ironing. I stood in the center of the living room, the room I had saved for 40 years to buy, trembling. Renee, casually filing her nails, looked up, her expression icy. If you don't agree, you can pack your things and leave. This house needs someone who contributes, not someone who just takes up space. From the oversized armchair, Daniel, my son-in-law, didn't even bother to look away from his trading app. And of course, all these contributions include covering the household expenses. That's what your monthly pension is for, Ilara. The audacity was staggering. Not only were they demanding I become their unpaid domestic worker, but I was also expected to pay for the privilege. The final, sickening blow was delivered with cruel confidence. Daniel has already consulted a solicitor. Since we've been living here for over 2 years and maintaining the place, Renee said, a smug little smile playing on her lips, we have tenants' rights. You can be our employee and stay, or you can leave and we stay anyway. The blackmail was clear. My own house, bought with my own hard-earned money, was being used as leverage. My grandchildren, Leo and Sophia, were glued to their tablets, completely oblivious to the war being waged in their presence. Leo glanced up. Grandma, are we having the chocolate biscuits today? I'm hungry. The crushing normality was the worst part. Now they simply formalized my new role with a schedule. Why must it be me? Because you're the one who doesn't work, Alara, Daniel interjected with a dismissive wave. We have real careers, real responsibilities. You just collect your government check and watch daytime television. Frankly, this schedule will give you purpose. You've seemed very listless lately. 40 years as a legal assistant, 40 years raising Renee alone, all reduced to listless and unproductive. The sheer contempt felt like a physical assault. The schedule hadn't appeared overnight. It was the culmination of 2 years of slow, corrosive entitlement. 3 months ago, the financial invasion began. I was diligently cleaning the kitchen, scrubbing at a stain left by one of Daniel's protein shake spills. Renee entered, focused on her phone. Mom, one more thing about the expenses. I've gone ahead and added your pension direct deposit to our main joint banking app. You did what, Renee? It's just more practical. Daniel and I are managing all the major payments. The utilities, the property tax, which, we cover the majority of now, so it's just easier if all the household income flows into one place. Think of it as a family fund. That's my pension, my safety net, the money I earned for 40 years. Mom, please, we are your safety net. You live here, we feed you, we keep you company. Don't you trust your own daughter? It simplifies the bookkeeping. Besides, I left you a reloadable gift card for your coffee trips. $50 a week, that's more than enough for one person. The lie was so smooth, so easily delivered. They weren't covering the property tax. They were using my money to cover the property tax. I had felt a chill then, realizing my financial independence was gone. 1 month later came the physical erasure. I was looking at an old photo of my late husband. Daniel and Renee walked in with 2 large, empty storage bins. Great, you're here. We're starting the declutter. Declutter? Yes, darling. This room is going to be the family command center before we move the master back in. We need to clear out all the unnecessary bulk. Those heavy wood pieces, the vanity, this bed frame, it's all too heavy. We've ordered a sleek, modern frame for us. We need you to box up everything that isn't strictly essential. This is my vanity. Your father bought this for me. Nostalgia doesn't pay the bills, Alara. This stuff is just taking up space. It needs to go into storage. We need the space for our professional wardrobe and the kids' tutoring supplies. We're being practical. We're making the space work for the whole family. Where is my stuff going? The garage for now, but don't worry. The utility room is small, so you won't have to clean as much. See? It's a win-win. The forced reduction of my life into 2 storage bins relegated to the garage. That was when I realized I was no longer the owner. I was a tenant being phased out. Even my attempt to maintain the house under the exhausting, imposed conditions led to further degradation. 2 weeks later, I was struggling in a sudden downpour, hauling 4 large, overflowing recycling bins to the curb. My neighbor Chloe hurried over with an umbrella. Ilara, what on earth are you doing? It's a monsoon. Just taking out the trash. Daniel and Renee left for a weekend trip, and they insisted on pre-cleaning the yard before they returned. It needs to be perfect for Monday. Your hands are raw. Did they leave you a schedule? Oh, just helping out the family. They work so hard. They're on a romantic weekend getaway, and you're outside in the rain hauling industrial waste. Alura, this isn't helping out. This is something else. You look like you're shrinking. I'm fine, Chloe, just wet. You are a vibrant woman who owns this house. Don't let them make you feel small. If you ever need to talk, call me. Day or night, Chloe's words were the first seed of resistance, but still I hadn't acted. The inertia of love and fear was too strong. Then came the final, unforgivable insult. The following Monday was a master class in calculated imposition. At 5:30 am, the doorbell shrieked, waking me before the cursed schedule demanded. It was Dana, Daniel's mother, finally. That taxi was atrocious, she announced, shoving 2 massive designer suitcases inside my foyer. I hope Daniel explained my dietary requirements. Very sensitive stomach. Nothing less than fresh, low-sodium, organic eggs, perfectly ripe avocado, and whole bean coffee. She was an uninvited guest arriving like a queen. I was forced to carry her heaviest suitcase down the hall. She inspected my master bedroom, sniffed the air, and declared, "It will do, but you'll need to change all the linens immediately. I require silk sheets and a hypoallergenic detergent." Hypoallergenic detergent. Another expense, another demand, all falling on my already non-existent budget. At 6 o'clock am sharp, Dana stood in my kitchen, draped in a luxurious velvet robe, reciting her specific breakfast order. I have no organic eggs, Dana. I have no whole bean coffee, and the pantry is nearly empty. I spent what little I had left on cleaning supplies and food for the children over the weekend. What do you mean you have nothing? She shrieked, pointing an accusing finger at me. Daniel told me this house had a competent housekeeper. Daniel burst into the kitchen. Ilara, what is this nonsense? My mother needs to be looked after. Didn't you budget properly this weekend? Go to the market now and get what she needs. And with what money, Daniel? I spent my monthly pension keeping your family fed and your house clean. I have no more money for unplanned groceries. His response was chillingly casual. Then use your savings, Ilara. That's what savings are for, emergencies. And frankly, my mother not being able to eat a decent breakfast in your house is an emergency. The realization hit me. They saw my savings as their backup budget, my dignity as their discardable property. As Renee walked in and sided immediately with Daniel, chiding me for my selfish attitude and exaggerating over $15, I quietly slipped away. I didn't head to the supermarket. I headed for the city center. I left the house without a coat, driven by a cold, clear fury that burned hotter than any fear. I wasn't just walking away from Daniel and Renee. I was walking away from 2 years of silent complicity. I wasn't going to the supermarket. I was going to reclaim my life. I found a small, slightly dusty law office advertised on a bus bench, David Stone, Elder Law and Property Rights. It felt like fate. I walked in, my hands still shaking from Daniel's demand that I use my savings. I sat across from David Stone. I recounted the whole nightmare, the schedule, the financial drain, the moving of my furniture, the joint bank accounts, and Dana's entitled arrival. I spoke for nearly 30 minutes, a dam finally breaking. When I finished, David leaned back. Mrs. Everett, what you are describing is systematic elder and economic exploitation. Your daughter and son in law have leveraged your love and your property to create a life of subsidized comfort for themselves. They have zero legal standing to evict you or to impose a labor contract. I don't know if I can afford this. They already have access to my accounts. I had to withdraw this $200 in cash from my emergency fund. They might notice. Mrs. Everett, the emergency is already happening. You're funding their lifestyle, they're threatening to take your property, and they've created a forced labor contract. You can't afford not to do this. We're going to put a legal firewall between you and their exploitation. They are relying on your fear of being alone. We are going to make them realize they are the ones who are truly dependent. They told me they had tenants' rights, that because they've been maintaining the house for 2 years, I can't kick them out. That's a common scare tactic, likely based on poor internet searches. In this state, a tenant who pays no rent, provides services under duress, and financially drains the owner has no credible claim. Will call their bluff. The law protects the property owner, especially one who is a senior citizen being financially victimized. Furthermore, their attempt to impose a work schedule and control your finances moves this from a simple landlord/tenant matter into the realm of elder abuse statutes. What do I do first? We execute a 3-point plan, effective immediately. I will draft the necessary notices today. David pulled out a pad and wrote clearly. 1. Financial separation, the firewall. You go to your bank first, freeze all joint access, set up a secure, independent account. Cancel all secondary credit card access. Their financial emergencies are no longer your burden. 2. The legal notice, the weapon. We deliver 2 documents. Document A. A 30-day notice of change in tenancy terms for Renee and Daniel. $800 market rate rent plus 50% utilities. No negotiation. Document B. A 48-hour notice to trespasser for Dana. She is an unauthorized imposition and must vacate immediately. 3. The delivery, the authority. You must deliver these with absolute calm. No shouting, no tears, no emotional engagement. You are simply delivering a business decision from the owner of the property. The moment you show doubt, they'll seize it. This is about power, and you are the one who owns the house and holds the deed. You are the sovereign, no tears. Just business, correct. The price for this immediate action is $300. $100 for the consultation, $200 for drafting the legal notices. I paid him the $300, watching the money leave my hand, but feeling an unprecedented rush of relief. It was the best investment I had made in 2 years. I left the law office and walked directly to my bank branch. I spoke with the bank manager, Anna. So, you want to remove your daughter's and son-in-law's authorized access to all 4 of your accounts, including the one tied to your pension, and cancel the secondary credit card on the platinum account. Yes, immediately. And I want to set up an alert that notifies me only if any request for access is made. I also need to secure my safety deposit box. Anna looked at the transaction history. Large, unexplained purchases of electronics and high-end fashion. Mrs. Everett, this is a very wise move. There have been some large, recurring expenses here that look non-essential. It appears they have been treating your accounts as an extension of their income. Yes, I was paying for their life. Now I'm paying for my own. That is the most essential purchase of all. The firewall is up, Mrs. Everett. Your money is secure. With my financial and legal firewalls in place, I felt an almost physical transformation. I was the homeowner, the client, the decision maker. I collected the 3 letters from David Stone's office at 10:30 a.m. The weight of the official paper in my hand felt like the weight of my own dignity being restored. I returned home 4 hours late, my hands empty of groceries but full of legal power. Daniel was still at his virtual job in the living room, and Renee and Dana were in the kitchen, openly furious about the lack of food. Look who finally decided to grace us with her presence. The supermarket is 5 minutes away. Did you get lost, Alara? Mom, you were supposed to get breakfast. Dana has a dietary restriction. This is completely irresponsible. We need to talk, I said, my voice measured and calm. I walked straight to the kitchen counter, placing the three official-looking letters with David Stone's letterhead on the pristine surface. I've been at a lawyer's office, I stated, watching Renee's face drain of color. A lawyer? Mom, what are you doing? This is a family matter. It stopped being a family matter when you presented me with a printed work schedule and threatened to throw me out of the house I own. These are legal notifications. Renee immediately snatched her letter, scanning the contents with desperate speed. Dana cautiously took hers. I leaned against the counter, the epicenter of my servitude, and watched the power shift. This is ridiculous, Renee shrieked, slamming the paper onto the counter. You can't charge us $800 a month. You know we can't afford that. We're your family. Then perhaps you should find a living situation that you can afford with your current income, I countered. The letter also clarifies that the schedule is abolished and any informal agreement regarding household chores is terminated. I will no longer be providing free services. My dignity is not a utility. Dana's letter was simpler, a crushing two-paragraph ultimatum. She had 48 hours to vacate the property, as her presence was an unauthorized imposition on the owner. The confrontation had begun. The shock in their eyes was priceless. They had assumed my silence meant surrender. They were about to learn that my silence had simply been the planning stage. Renee stood frozen, clutching the legal notice, her calculated indignation crumbling into genuine panic. She was realizing this was not the familiar, tearful argument she could win with a hug and a promise. This was litigation. Mom, wait, we can talk about this. We can change the terms. This is crazy. The terms are on the paper, Renee, and they are non-negotiable. You've had 2 years of informal agreements. This is the formal one, pay or vacate. You are a cruel, heartless old woman. Daniel, your mother needs you. The front door slammed open with unnecessary force. Daniel, alerted by Renee's frantic call, stormed into the kitchen. His face was a mask of aggressive entitlement, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of genuine fear. Alara, you've completely lost it. What is this nonsense you're circulating? You think you can bully us. I told you, I consulted a lawyer. We have tenants' rights, and you'll be hearing from my counsel. I consulted a qualified elder law specialist, David Stone. And unlike your internet research, my lawyer informed me that I have a rock-solid case for elder and economic exploitation. Want to know what that entails? No court is going to side with a bitter old woman over her own daughter and grandchildren. A court will side with the owner who has been forced to subsidize your luxury lifestyle while you steal her peace and dignity. A court will see the evidence. I walked to the refrigerator, pulled off the humiliating work schedule Renee had taped there, and held it up. Exhibit A, the work schedule. A legal contract requiring 18 hours of unpaid labor from a 66-year-old. This alone is coercion. I walked to my small purse, pulled out a stack of itemized credit card statements I had secretly printed. Exhibit B, the financial records, 2 years of draining my pension and savings. Your $400 payment for Leo's special tutoring, which was spent on video games. Your $150 professional clothing allowance charged to my card while you were working from home in pajamas. Your romantic weekend retreat, the very weekend I was forced to spend $30 of my own money on cleaning supplies just to maintain your mess. We were trying to help you. You were depressed. This was therapy. We were keeping you busy. You were selling me my own slavery as a self-help program. You used my love as a currency for your comfort. And the children, they were learning that their grandmother is disposable, a free service provider. That is the only thing I regret, that I let you teach them that. Look, we can negotiate. We'll scrap the schedule. We'll pay the utilities. Just let us stay. It's impossible to move 30 days. Where will we go? You have exactly 30 days to either accept the $800 rent plus expenses or find alternate housing. And Dana, you have until 5 o'clock p.m. tomorrow to be gone. The conversation is over. The terms are non negotiable. This is a betrayal. No, this is called setting a boundary, and in my house, it's about to be enforced. Suddenly, the children arrived home from school, their small voices cutting through the poisoned atmosphere. Grandma, why is everyone yelling? And why is Grandma Dana crying? Dana, seizing the opportunity, rushed to embrace Leo in a dramatic hug, wailing loudly. Your cruel grandmother is throwing us out, darling. She's tearing the family apart. I walked to the children, calmly pulling them away from Dana's performance. It's okay, my loves. The adults are having an important conversation about how to treat each other. Your parents need to make some decisions about respecting house rules. What rules? Rules like all adults living here have to contribute fairly to the expenses. And rules like no one can force other family members to work without rest. That's how we show respect. Renee, mortified that her children had witnessed the collapse of their parents' financial kingdom, grabbed Daniel's arm. You stay out of this, Mom. This is between us and Daniel. This is between the property owner and the tenants, and the negotiation is closed. I watched them retreat, Renee weeping hysterically, Daniel defeated and silent. The silence was immediate and immense. I walked back to the kitchen counter, picked up the 3 letters, and calmly put them back in my purse. The war for my peace was just beginning. I knew the next 30 days would be filled with manipulation, guilt, and fear. But for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't afraid. I was resolute. Dana was the first to fall. She departed exactly 48 hours after receiving the notice, leveraging her exit for maximum dramatic effect. You see, my son, this is what comes of letting common people dictate terms. I am leaving this house of hate. You will never hear from me again. She then turned to me, her eyes narrowed with pure distilled malice. You have ruined my son's future, Alara. And you will die alone in this empty box, consumed by your selfishness. Goodbye, Dana. I wish you well in your own home. Daniel had to borrow money from his siblings to secure a hotel room for his mother, a humiliation he blamed entirely on me. This small victory hardened my resolve. Dana's dramatic pronouncements were simply noise. The fact was, I had enforced my first boundary. The next 30 days were a systematic siege of guilt, manipulation, and rage, the 3 stages David Stone had warned me about. Renee deployed the loving daughter tactic. She tried to cook dinner disastrously, offered to do my laundry, which she ruined, and constantly reminded me of her childhood. Mom, I remember when I was 5 and I was sick, and you stayed up all night just holding my hand. How can the woman who did that turn around and demand rent from her own child? The woman who did that also worked 40 years to buy this house. The daughter who took advantage of that love and tried to impose an 18-hour work schedule is who I am addressing now. That debt of love does not cover free rent, Renee. Read the lease agreement. Lease agreement, you sound like a stranger. I am the owner, acting legally. You are the tenant, being offered a contract. It is a business relationship now, initiated by your threats. Daniel, meanwhile, launched the man of reason approach. Ilara, let's be rational. The market rate is too high. If we pay you, we can't save. We'll be stuck renting forever. Is that what you want for your grandchildren? I want my grandchildren to learn that their parents are responsible, financially independent adults. You are 42 years old, Daniel. It is time to fund your own life, not mine. The rent stands. When soft tactics failed, the volume increased. Daniel began leaving passive-aggressive messes. A full garbage can next to the already clean kitchen bin, dirty plates left on the stairs, and loud, late-night video game sessions that shook the utility room walls. One evening, he confronted me in the living room, yelling, "You are a selfish, bitter, old woman. You are going to ruin us. Do you realize what kind of stress you're putting on Renee? She's devastated. This is cruel, Ilara. I have legal protections against harassment and excessive noise. The stress you are under is the natural consequence of having to live within your means. The lease terms include quiet enjoyment for the owner. You are violating the terms. If you continue, I will start documenting violations for the formal eviction process. The final, most painful tactic came via the children. Renee started coordinating the children's activities to maximize my guilt. Yes, I told the school that Leo can't be in the robotics club. We need to save money now, since Grandma needs all of her pension back. He's very disappointed, but that's just life, I guess. Leo came into the kitchen, his face crumpled. Grandma, why can't I go to robotics? Your club costs money, Leo. Your parents are choosing to save their income for their future home. But how about this? I will pay for one robotics class just for you as a gift from your grandma. Not from the house fund, just from me. I pulled out my own, newly secured debit card and paid for the robotics club on the spot. Renee, witnessing the failure of her emotional leverage, stormed off furious. I was teaching the children that my money was no longer theirs by right, but that my love was freely given. By the last week, the fight drained out of them, replaced by hurried, resentful preparations for moving. They realized I would not crack. David Stone had confirmed their fears. Their legal case was non-existent. Renee stopped yelling and started being overly, formally polite. Mrs. Everett, could you possibly iron this for Daniel? It's for his interview next week. We are trying to be professional now. I no longer perform housekeeping duties. If you need ironing done, you can take it to a cleaner or do it yourself. Of course. I understand. Daniel called me Ilara instead of his usual honey or mom. He even offered to take the trash out. They had finally remembered that basic decency existed, but only when they needed something or realized the power had irrevocably shifted. On the morning of the 30th day, a rental moving truck was idling outside. They were leaving. We found a place, a two-bedroom apartment, $850 a month plus security deposit. Turns out we could afford it after all. I'm glad you found a solution that works for you. Mom, we hope you understand that we always loved you. It's just that sometimes families have misunderstandings. Misunderstandings. Pause 0.5s. I looked around the stripped living room at the marks on the floor where my antique furniture used to be. 2 years of systematic exploitation reduced to a simple misunderstanding. I understand completely, Renee. They drove away in silence, the rental truck disappearing around the corner. The children were quiet, strapped into the back seat, waving small, sad goodbyes. I stood on the porch of my empty house. The silence was immediate and immense. I had won the war, but the aftermath felt heavy. The biggest challenge remained. Learning how to be happy in the silence and proving Dana's prediction of a lonely, empty box wrong. The house was mine again, but the silence was deafening. The first few days felt like living in a soundproof chamber. I walked through the rooms, the echoes of my own footsteps amplified, and I often found myself reaching for a chore that no longer existed. I had been defined by my servitude for so long that I didn't know who Alara, the free woman, was supposed to be. I sat in the newly vacated master bedroom. I had the walls painted immediately, a bright, serene robin's egg blue, to scrub away the memory of their arrogant occupancy. The furniture I had retrieved from the garage was reinstalled, old and familiar. I made small, deliberate choices that felt huge. I had breakfast at 10 a.m. because I chose to. I bought the expensive, artisanal coffee that Daniel had deemed non-essential. I opened the refrigerator and stocked it with things I liked: a small artisanal cheese, fresh berries, and a single bottle of good wine. The first time I bought a bouquet of fresh yellow tulips for my dining room table, I stood in the supermarket aisle and cried. They were $15 that would have gone toward hypoallergenic sheets for Dana or a high-end electronic gadget for Daniel. Now they were a simple, beautiful investment in my own happiness. The feeling of emptiness gradually transformed into a quiet, profound sense of peace. It was the sound of my own thoughts, uninterrupted by demands, accusations, or the dread of the next chore. My friend Chloe became my anchor. You can't just stand guard over your victory, Alara, you have to live it. She enrolled me in classes at the community center. I signed up for advanced watercolor and somewhat daringly beginner's salsa. I was 66 and I was learning to dance and paint parts of myself that had been suppressed for years. Look at you, you look 10 years younger. That pension of yours is doing more work for your well being than it ever did for Daniel's stock portfolio. I've traded a career in unpaid servitude for a career in self care. It's the best job I've ever had. My financial life was clean and calm. My pension flowed into my account untouched. I set up automated payments for my own bills, and I even started a small retirement savings account again. I had money for emergencies, but now the only emergency I worried about was running out of paint. The toughest adjustment was the relationship with my grandchildren, Leo and Sophia. David Stone had helped me draft a formal visitation agreement, setting boundaries that Renee fought bitterly but eventually accepted. The children visited every other Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. At first, Renee tried to use the visits as leverage. I hope you're grateful for these visits, Mom. If you don't compromise on the utility bills, these drop-offs might become more difficult to coordinate. I simply forwarded the texts to David Stone, who sent a neutral but firm legal reminder about parental obligations and non-interference with grandparental visitation rights. Renee stopped the threats. The new dynamic with the children was miraculous. When I wasn't responsible for their constant care, discipline, and feeding, I was free to be their grandma. I would take them to the park, spoil them with single servings of ice cream, and teach them simple watercolor techniques. They saw me laughing, not scrubbing. Grandma, why can't I go to robotics? Leo's original club, which I paid for. Grandma, why don't you live with us anymore? Sophia asked one afternoon. That's not true, honey. I love you more than anything, but I need my own home and your parents need their own home. Now, when you come here, I am just your grandma. I'm not the cleaner, I'm not the cook, and I'm not the employee. I'm just the one who loves you and buys you ice cream. Yes, now we just play. Before, you were always cleaning the floor. Leo, who was older and more perceptive, had a quiet moment with me. Mom and Dad made you work a lot, didn't they, Grandma? Yes, my love. They made me forget that I was the owner of this house and the owner of my time. But now we are all learning better. David Stone called me one final time to close the case. Renee and Daniel have officially withdrawn all claims, Mrs. Everett. They are done. How does freedom feel, David? It feels like waking up from a very long nightmare, I imagine. It feels like remembering that you are a person, not an object. 3 months after the final showdown, I woke up, stretched, and dressed to go to my salsa class. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back no longer had the pinched, anxious look of a domestic servant. Her eyes were bright, her back was straight, and her mouth held a subtle, determined smile. I had learned the most profound lesson of my life. It is never too late to reclaim your self-respect. I had stood against the betrayal of my own blood and won. I didn't lose my family. I simply traded a toxic, exploitative relationship for a healthy, boundaried one. I had rebuilt my home and in doing so had become the architect of my own life. True love never requires the sacrifice of your dignity, and true family never asks you to shrink so they can expand. This was the story of Alara, the architect of her own home. It's a testament to the fact that boundaries aren't just polite suggestions. They are the foundation of self-respect. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on a few key points that could be debated for 2 hours. The moral line: did Renee and Daniel cross the line when they introduced the schedule, or when they introduced the financial drain? The lawyer's role. Was Alara wrong to use a lawyer against her own daughter, or was it the only language they truly understood? The aftermath: how do you think Renee and Daniel's new apartment life is going, now that they have to face real rent and real responsibilities? Drop your deep dive opinions in the comments below. If this story of sovereignty and strength resonated with you, please like and subscribe to my channel. Let's build a community where dignity is non negotiable. Big hugs, and I'll see you in the next one.